Hello, everybody, and welcome to Two Goals. I am Katia,
And I'm Maria Laura.
and in this week's episode, we're connecting the USA, Puerto Rico, and football, or soccer as you may prefer. Today's guest, Esmeralda Negrón, was a successful breaking records professional football player, having played for two national teams. Through her professional pathway, she worked with premier soccer events and media business, and has also created her own company dedicated to develop the new football talents. Having been successful in all areas, that wasn't enough for her. She is now the co-founder and general manager of a women's football company devoted to elevating the sport and its players, Atalanta Media, turning the invisible into visible and sharing this beautiful sport played by women through a platform that promises to change the women's football panorama forever. She's definitely a trailblazer on and off the pitch. Esmeralda, welcome to Two Goals.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And great intro.
We are incredibly excited to have you here, and I would like to start by opening some quotes here. Esmeralda Negrón destroyed the soccer record books at Princeton, both for men and the women, during her college career. Esmeralda Negrón, 05, the greatest scorer in Princeton soccer history. So, as Casio mentioned before, you had a magnificent career inside the pitch, breaking all kinds of records, being successful, recognized after that. Can you please tell us about your greatest memories of playing football in college, professionally, and also playing for the U.S. national team under 21s, and later as a senior for Puerto Rico?
I've been so lucky to have had such a great career and incredible experiences in the sport that I'm so passionate about. I think in college, my fondest memory was our senior season. We had an incredible team. We had Diana Matheson, who played on the Canadian women's national team, was a phenomenal player, and just had an incredible group of personalities and talents on the team. And we actually ended up going to the Final Four that year, and it was my senior year, and it was such a great way to kind of exit, I guess, my college career, so to speak. We became the first team in Ivy League history to go to a Final Four in a 64-team tournament. So, obviously there had been other teams on the men's and the women's side, but less teams to start off with in the tournament. So I was incredibly proud and excited, I think, about my college career. And then obviously, the success at the collegiate level gave me the opportunity to get called up to the U21 U.S. women's national team. And was playing and training alongside the likes of Carly Lloyd and Allie Krieger and Meg Rapinoe, and I think Becky Sarabrun was there. So that was incredible, and my goal in my life was to play for the full women's national team. So I think achieving that and getting that experience was incredible. I think for me, just the training, environments and training camps, to be around that type of player and caliber of player. I was always super competitive and so passionate. So I think to be around more like-minded players like that was just an incredible experience for me. I think my fondest memory was, I think it was 2005. We went to the Nordic Cup, which was in Iceland. Ultimately won that tournament with the US U21 national team. But I think for me, that was kind of it was a goal of mine to represent the United States. And unfortunately, I fell short of playing for the full national team. So, but I still feel incredibly proud and excited that I had that experience as someone who was so passionate about the game. And then in retirement, started my college coaching career in my later 20s. And the Puerto Rican national team came calling, and they said, "Hey, will you come play with us for Olympic qualifications?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" It was a great experience again. Traveled to Venezuela to play in the Gold Cup. Had some great experiences traveling and meeting new people. I think across the board, the relationships that you make, in all the different teams that you play, and just being surrounded by equally as passionate and competitive players, you know. I think, you know, I just love the game. I loved playing it. I still do. So every environment, you know, presented a new opportunity, new people, and an opportunity to compete at the highest level.
Yeah, and regarding to college, one of the things that attracts young girls to the USA is the possibility of performing on and off the pitch, being part of a soccer college program. And as we know, a football player hangs up the boots very early in their life, so it's better to be prepared for the future outside the field. And the soccer college programs offer this possibility. And you lived it both ways. You played college soccer and you were also a coach at the same level. You were a soccer coach at Seton Hall University and at Princeton University. From a coaching point of view, how important is the college soccer pathway for the players? Is it the best way to prepare yourself, especially women, to perform at the highest level and at the same time to be ready to develop a career outside the pitch?
Yeah, I think the college sports and athletics in the U.S. is incredible. It gives, you know, young youth players like kind of these goals and aspirations to play at that next level. And I think before, when the women's pro league, if you were just a super, you know, talented and passionate player, you didn't have a lot of opportunities beyond college. So having that kind of 4-year career where you got to compete at that highest level on a national level, and you know, I think that's super important for young girls, especially those that are that passionate and talented as well, and competitive and want that environment. So, you know, I think it's an amazing experience. I think to be able to couple, you know, an education with, you know, competing at the highest level is fantastic, and it's proven to be a really great pathway, you know, for the U.S. Women's National Team recruitment, obviously for the NWSL now, the Women's Pro League. And just overall, I think regardless of whether you go on to play professional, you know, soccer with your national team, you know, the experience, you know, playing collegiate sports, it's time management, it's responsibility, it's rising to the occasion. You know, you're now on a team, you know, it's incredible when you step onto that field. Your first preseason freshman year, you know, there's 5 to 7 girls in your recruiting class, you know, and they're the best players from their respective areas in the U.S. And the U.S. is such a big country, and soccer is so big at, you know, with girls across the country. So I think, you know, it instills that, you know, that sense of, you know, I think just responsibility, and again dealing with pressure and responsibility and camaraderie, and how you deal with teammates, and you know, all of that is obviously applicable to the workplace. And I think, you know, you look at, I think, don't quote me on this stat, but I think there's like a certain amount of C-level executives, female, and I think a large majority of them played collegiate sports or grew up playing sports at a super high level. I think all the lessons you learn on the field, the challenges that you face, whether it's injuries or playing time, you know, or consistency and performing, you know, all of that is applicable to anything you do in your life, especially in the professional space.
Now that you just mentioned this, actually we like researching a lot about our guests, especially into the education and professional path, because we have noticed that you guys are really well prepared. I mean, like, you don't stop preparing yourself. You like studying, you like being updated with the things that has been happening in the industry. So you have a bachelor in Latin American studies and also a master degree in sports management. Was this change of educational subjects kind of like on purpose? You were trying to pursue a dream? I mean, you also mentioned your coaching path, but why is it important to try and accomplish a degree at the highest level to be prepared and enter the industry?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, I went to Princeton, and so it's a liberal arts college. And so there aren't a lot of career-oriented majors. So you kind of choose something that you're interested in or passionate about. So I actually was a pre-med and then also I was on a pre-med track because I thought I'd actually go to med school. And then my major was Latin American studies because I just enjoyed the subject. So I didn't necessarily think, when I was graduating college or going, when I chose my major as more like what I was interested and passionate about in learning. And then it also gave me a great balance to all the science courses that I was taking in order to pursue, this medical track. Obviously didn't do that. For me, the game and playing the game was what I wanted to do. And it was, at the core of me. So, trying to pursue that goal of playing on the women's national team was first and foremost, and just kind of got involved in the game. And then obviously didn't go back to medical school. But, when I was transitioning out of playing into coaching, I never had aspirations of being a college coach. What happened was when I graduated college, actually, in 2005, the first iteration of the Women's Pro League had folded. So WUSA was done. And I had really no opportunities. Like I didn't know what to do in order to kind of continue playing and reach this goal of playing on the women's national team. So I actually was one of the first US players to go and play abroad in Europe. I played a season in France and a season in Germany. But if you can imagine, this is 2005, the conditions weren't great. Salary wasn't great. I didn't have benefits. So it was just something that I couldn't really sustain. And while I was in Germany, my second year, I got called by a youth club coach of mine to come coach with him at Seton Hall. He had just gotten the head coaching job, Kazbek Tambi. And he knew I kind of wanted to go back to playing once the next pro league kind of launched in the US. So he's like, come help me. You can train in, you can keep yourself fit. I would love for you to be part of my coaching staff. And so that's actually how I got into college coaching. I did that for about 4 years and was thinking about going back to law school. I knew I wanted to be involved in the sport in some capacity, but, wanted to do it from a business side of things. But actually got a call from my coach at Princeton when I was thinking about kind of transitioning, and she was like, the assistant coaching position is open. I'd love for you to come back, to your alma mater and coach for me and help me with the players. And I was like, at that point I was like, well, that opportunity doesn't come around a lot. So let me give it a go and see if maybe, college coaching might be something I want to do. Although I think I had an inkling already, it wasn't. So I actually went to Princeton then after that. And kind of very, pretty quickly realized, that wasn't what I wanted to do long-term, but didn't even know what else to do. So that's kind of what led me to go back to school to Columbia to get the master's in sports management. I didn't have any experience on the business side of the sports industry, just obviously as a player and as a collegiate coach. So I needed something to kind of give me that education and that experience to get my foot in the door. And ultimately did with Relevant Sports Group. And now, I'm here having founded, my own media company with my really great friend, it sounds like similar to your guys' relationship, which is really cool.
Yeah. And exactly what you said, while studying sports management, you started working in the football industry with Relevant Sports. And you kind of done it all in this company. You worked as a consultant to Real Madrid and Manchester United at the International Champions Cup, then as a marketing consultant, after as a manager, and finally, more recently, as a senior director. Several years, different roles. Can you give us a summary of your overall performance there, and also some perspective of your positions and responsibilities that you had in order to present to our audience how you can start in a company, grow and develop yourself inside of it?
Yeah, of course. I think I actually started Relevant Sports Group, I want to say in 2013 I was an intern. So I was still a college coach at Princeton. Knew I wanted to get out of college coaching and transition to the business side, but I didn't even know where to start. Luckily, I had a connection to Charlie Stilitano, who's the chairman, and Matt Contos, who is managing director recently at Relevant Sports Group. And they're both Princeton soccer alums. So that's kind of how I got connected with the with the group, I gave them a call. I said, can I intern? Can I help you in the summer? Like, I think just, if you're interested in something, reach out to people and just see if you can get your foot in the door or just some experience. And that's kind of what I did. So, I was probably like a early 30s intern at Relevant. But, I started to help them, and I did a load of logistics for them with the Real Madrid tours. I got to travel with Real Madrid, did the same with Man United and Chelsea as well in different years. So I did that role, as an intern first, and then I did a good job with kind of handling pressure. And obviously you're under a lot of pressure with clubs and the demands and their needs, and helping to facilitate everything from, ensuring that everything goes well, at the hotel to the training facility to additional needs that they may need, solving problems a lot. And so that was kind of, for me, I think as an athlete, I was fine with pressure and doing that. So it was kind of like, I was invigorated by the environment. And then as a soccer or football fan, I was like, wow, I was sitting next to Cristiano Ronaldo on their Real Madrid's private plane and traveling around and seeing them up close and personal and watching them train. And it was an amazing experience for me. And so kind of my role with them evolved. So the next years, they kind of hired me on as, I had different roles now with different tours and different clubs, and more of a leadership role by the end with Man United. And then towards the end, I kept pitching to them based on my experience, like some grassroots initiatives that I think they could do to grow their brand, but also was really passionate about a women's tournament. And I kept pitching it. And it's funny because I actually got brought on hired full-time in 2018. So 5 years later. And they still hadn't really said yes to the women's tournament, but I got hired as to kind of help grow their youth tournament, the ICC Futures, under Brendan Doyle. And again, I was like pitching women's tournament. And it was funny because that year the clubs wanted it too. So we ended up doing something very last minute. I directed the tournament, put it all together in 2018, and then did the same in 2019. So I think it was like my work ethic, my ability to handle pressure, my overall kind of sense of the landscape of the soccer landscape with all of my experiences. And then, I think I just always had this vision, and I wanted the women's game to succeed. And I just always felt like there was so much opportunity and potential there. And I think I just kind of wouldn't stop, and I wouldn't let go. And so I think, being creative and being a visionary and looking at opportunities. And I think your own experiences in life kind of lead you, to your next step, and I think, I felt a bit lost, to be honest, after playing, because coaching wasn't speaking to me. All I wanted to do was play, but the conditions weren't the best. And I couldn't quite figure out how to let go of a full-time position to kind of go to taking that risk and not really having any sort of financial stability. And it was a really hard journey for me. I will say that, just mentally. And I think a lot of people talk about it as athletes, who are you and what are you when your career ends is a very difficult transition. I think especially when it ends when you're not ready for it to end, because everything, your life has revolved around your performance, and you've had that outlet where you have that, almost you become a different person on the field. I know I do. It's like I'm very creative. I express myself in a certain way. You kind of lose yourself a little bit, and having that a sanctuary, so to speak, I think it's a really hard transition. And so anyway, I think it was, I look back, and what's led me to Atalanta has been every single step of that journey, whether it was from a collegiate player to youth player to, experiencing what I did as a professional player in Europe, and those frustrations. And then, my experience as a collegiate coach. And then, obviously having directed the Women's International Champions Cup, I realized, okay, I had my own challenges and hurdles there. Like, how are we marketing this? Are we getting support from our broadcast partner? Why doesn't anybody know who these Lyon players are? It's crazy to me. You have the 7-time Champions League winner and some of the best players in the world. And still, we would go into these markets and we do open training sessions, and you couldn't really, no one really knew who they were, and that made me like frustrated. And it's definitely led me to where I am now. So that was a long-winded answer, I think.
No, so completely worth it, because at the end of the day, we really, I mean, what you mentioned is really important to try and be as transparent and honest. I mean, this lack of support for athletes at times, and trying to switch paths, like if they have an injury, maybe you can be next to them and kind of like, okay, what else do you want to do with your life? Or maybe they haven't accomplished what they want and they are already trying to find their way into some other dreams. So I really like what you're mentioning. And you also, back in your answer starting, you were talking about vision, about strategy, about having a kind of like some goal and a set of objectives to try and make something, make a project bigger. I think that's really important, and we have said this before. We need more people like you trying to see an opportunity there in women's football and trying to build up around it. And since you were already into discussing into the things about this business that aren't working yet that well enough, do you think that this International Champions Cup, you mentioned celebrities like Cristiano Ronaldo that we all know, but you also mentioned the other part, like these Lyon players that were not recognized by anyone maybe in the US at the time. Do you think maybe from starting from now to the future, do you think this women's tournament, maybe this will become as huge as the men's, maybe big brands filling stadiums in the US?
Yeah, that was always the goal, for myself, personally, and I think for the department and the company. I can't speak for them anymore because I'm no longer with them, but I think from my experience, I will say, yes, that was a goal. The goal, we wanted to expand to 8 teams. We wanted to have multiple markets that we were in. And yes, we wanted to fill the stadiums because actually that tournament was incredible. I was so passionate about it and growing that. It was so cool we implemented prize money. We also implemented qualification criteria. So it wasn't we kind of were building it very different to the men's. So the men's was more of a kind of a tour, preseason tournament. But, for the women, we actually, you could only compete in it. The Champions League winner got an automatic bid. So Lyon was in it. And then the NWSL champions. So we had North Carolina Courage because they were the champions 2 years in a row in it. And then we had Atletico in the last year as La Liga Iberdrola winner. And then we had Manchester City in it. Although they hadn't won the league, they were the runners-up, and Chelsea got the first invite. They just weren't able to make it. So we were trying to build something really exciting and competitive, because I think on the women's side, you need to create that. The teams and the players don't have as big a profile. So for us, it was like putting the best product on the field. We felt like would obviously elevate the visibility of these clubs, these players, and we'd have the most, the best chance of success in terms of filling stadiums and attracting an audience for it. So I think that, the sky's the limit. I think the tournament has incredible, a tremendous amount of potential, and I'm excited to see what happens. And, hopefully everything can come back on soon. Obviously we're dealing with COVID, so it's a little bit difficult and challenging, but I certainly had, expectations and visions for the tournament. I think, part of, us doing what we're doing at Atalanta and starting to bring, these teams front and center and giving them premium broadcast visibility is the first step in growing fans and an audience. And I hope that helps likes of Relevant Sports Group and the Women's ICC and the success of that tournament. And as well as others in the leagues, just, in general, driving more investment and commercial value back to everybody.
And back in this interview, you said that coaching was not speaking to your heart, but you kind of stayed connected to the development on the pitch. And in between your experience at relevant sports, you created your own company, Esmeralda Negrón College Recruitment Consulting and Training.
Yeah.
Can you describe to us what its value proposal was, and in your opinion, based on your own experience, for a kid to develop, grow, and reach their maximum potential in football, how important is to have support of the resources your company offered? Is there something still lacking in the football grassroots panorama nowadays?
Yeah, I think there is. Like for me, it was interesting as a college coach, and I was so blessed and I didn't know it until probably over the last probably 5 to 10 years how blessed I was. But I grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey, and it is a melting pot. You're right outside New York City. And I was so lucky that I grew up in this amazing soccer and football environment. The Cosmos, the New York Cosmos from back in the late 70s, early 80s, I believe. I can't remember when the team and the league folded, but they brought over some of the most, notable international men's players. And when the league folded, I believe, and the team kind of disbanded, a lot of them stayed in the area. And I actually played, I grew up playing only with men for the most part until obviously I started to play with my club team. But I grew up playing in these small pickup environments with these former international stars. I didn't even realize they were stars. But I was so lucky to be in those environments where, the basic technique was stressed and it was taught, and, you were encouraged to be creative on the field in small side environments, and, the movement off the ball. I saw that I was in those environments with some of the best men's players in the world. And that was incredible for me. And I think when I transitioned to be a college coach, I realized, some of the female players still, couldn't quite pass the ball correctly, which to me, you're playing at the Division I college level, that shouldn't really happen. Basic long ball technique, finishing technique, timing of runs and movement off the ball, that type of stuff just wasn't, you'd be surprised how much it lacked. And so that's kind of why that was my inspiration for actually starting that company. And it was a transition period for me because I was coming out of college coaching. I said, what am I going to do? I need to make some money. But I had already kind of started launching that company in the Princeton area to make some extra money, to kind of engage with the grassroots community, because I love working with kids anyway in general. And so, but I think my experience as a collegiate coach made me realize, wow, I was lucky to have grown up in the environment I did, to have great coaches and great mentors and role models. And B, there's a need for really good coaching and really good attention to detail. From a young age, players need to get the basics down. And I think, sometimes in the US, and I think people have mentioned it, the players aren't as technical. And I think this is as Europeans, and I think this is or really globally, I think this is a product of, the development at the early stages. So that was kind of my inspiration for starting that company. And then the college recruitment consulting, I also started to incorporate that into my offerings and services, because as a college coach, I would deal with a lot of recruits and parents, and, a lot of them were just lost and confused about the process. It is a tough process. You're kind of constantly trying out. Coaches are constantly scouting you, but you're under the microscope a lot. Sometimes they're interested, but the more they see you, maybe they realize, oh, that's not what I need. So it is it's a really difficult and challenging process for young girls and parents. They feel very stressed by it. So, once I kind of got out of college coaching, especially, people started to call me for those types of services, just to coach them through the process, to answer questions, to help them with how to navigate this or that, or how to respond to certain situations through the college recruitment process. So I think both of those services and offerings were definitely, things that I realized were a need in the, in the environment and in the landscape, and B, were things that people actually sought me out to help them with. So that was the inspiration for the company. But I think both are really important, for the college recruitment process is not easy for a lot of players. And And then I think just in general, I think that, grassroots development, I can speak to the US specifically, I think needs to be a lot better.
Esmeralda, so far you have been really, really comfortable with the inside of the pitch questions. So let me take you out of that,
Great.
that area. No, and let's rewind to 2020 and your entrepreneurial spirit take you to this really new promising company, as Kasia mentioned before. Since August 2020, you are the co-founder and general manager of Atalanta Media, probably one of the most innovative ideas that I've heard lately. And can you please present the company to our audience? What's your main purpose and where can they find you and find a lot more about you?
Yeah, so the company, it's funny, the company was inspired, I think, by my journey. And I'm lucky to have met Hannah Brown, my co-founder at Relevant Sports Group. She actually has 10 years. She worked for 10 years at Sky as a media executive, and is currently a C-level executive of Formula E. She's phenomenal. Her and I became great friends, and we were roomies, just like you guys were. And, I was always kind of going on about my frustrations about women's football. And once I started working with the women's ICC, I wanted to follow the teams because I, established relationships with them, and I was excited to follow them throughout the year. And I think I just started to get really frustrated that I couldn't find Champions League. I couldn't find let's go play Barca in front of the Wanda, at the Wanda in front of 60,000 people, or the PSG Lyon matchup, or the Manchester Derby that had like a record crowd. Like I couldn't, you can access this. And I was like, why is this? We need to change this. What can we do? And we started to brainstorm. We started to iterate this idea and develop it. And basically, our thought was, you have the leagues. And what happens is it doesn't get this visibility because it gets stuck at a certain point. And what happens, you have the leagues that want investment for the rights. And then you have premium broadcasters that, have probably a lot on their plate. Either there's no proven value. So I'm not sure they're probably in a position or want to put any sort of investment in it. And so it kind of gets stuck, because the leagues and the rights holders want to hold that tight. And so we're like, okay, this might go on for way too long, that we need to accelerate growth. How can we change this? So we actually came in the middle. We invested in the rights. So for example, we have the FAWSL rights in the US, Germany, and Italy. And we did this, and we secured a distribution partner for them. So our distribution partner in the US for the FAWSL is NBC. This was a really historic deal for the FAWSL, and we are so excited to have facilitated it. But basically now you can, US fans, it's available to 85 million homes now in the US, which is incredible. It's on the same platform as the Premier League, the male counterparts. It's incredible. We're doing the same thing for the French league. So D1 Arkema, we have their broadcast partner is ESPN in the US. And then we have rights in the UK, and their distribution partner is BT Sport. And then in Germany and Italy, we have DAZN, and that's for both FAWSL and D1F in those territories. DAZN is the partner. But basically, we are facilitating premium distribution because without accessibility and visibility, there's no way to generate fans and an audience. And without an audience, that's basically what drives everything. There's no media rights value if you don't have an audience. There's no commercial value, or the commercial value is very low if you don't have fans and an audience. Ticket sales, after COVID, merchandise, all of these things. If you think about everything that drives investment in a sports league or a team, you need fans, and you can't have fans without accessibility and visibility. So we just felt like we could solve that problem. And on the back of that, there's kind of a two-pronged approach. So we're facilitating premium broadcast, but we're also creating our own kind of hub and community for women's football fans and young players around the world. It's called, you can access it on atafootball.com, but it's the Ata Football community, and we will start to build that out. At the moment, it has live matches, on-demand matches, highlights, and clips from each match. It has some podcasts, and we're building it out to include premium content. But really, like, we want it to be an incredible community where we deliver a lot of value. So, young girls can have opportunities for mentorship programs with the world's best players. We're developing club-specific partnerships so that we can include club-specific content on there, player development content as well. So if you're a forward, we hope to be able to deliver, some clips and highlights of the best goal scorers from across all of our leagues, we also have, I forgot, Bundesliga global clip rights as well. So, we feel like, the media landscape is fragmented. We're bringing it all together under one roof, so to speak, facilitating premium broadcasts. And we're excited. We want to, our inspiration for the platform also was, the grassroots market. I, as a young player, never had female players to look as role models. I think the only time I did was during the '99 World Cup. And Mia Hamm became my idol because I was a striker. But, I think it's never been accessible. So we would like to deliver something to them that they feel is super valuable and exciting, and allows them to get closer to the game and start to cultivate these role models, which they never had the opportunity to do so before. We have lofty goals, but we'd love for Ata football to be almost like a rite of passage for young girls that play the game in the US and globally. And they want to be a part of our community, and we can deliver them some great experiences and opportunities on the platform. So we're going to start to build that out over the next 3 to 4 months. We've just kind of focused on getting our broadcast agreements and execution kind of down. And now we're going to start to focus on building out the platform and marketing it to the grassroots market in the US and globally.
Yeah, and Esmeralda, when we talk about project with our guests, we usually talk about the project itself, but we do not pay so much attention to the idea behind it, the so-called brainstorming moments that you developed a bit here before. But sometimes it's difficult to take a risk and to have courage to do it. And now more than ever in the middle of a pandemic. And I'm saying this because sometimes for people like, I would say me and Maria, for example, we are starting. Sometimes we need to hear from someone that created a project where the moment started, when they had the courage to do this. So we want to ask you, how did this idea appear? And we ask this because even though we know women's football has a huge potential, and we are also aware that initially it is necessary a great investment, and the return of investment might take longer than expected, particularly in a case like yours, where we know that to invest in women's football, you need to be prepared to take a risk. So when did you take the courage to say, this is exactly what we need, let's go for it? That there was some called click moment for you to do it?
Yeah, it's something a lot of people ask us. So all of this happened very quickly. Hannah and I remember we started brainstorming in like November, December, just of last year. And we were like, what do we do? We came up with a couple ideas, but we just didn't feel like it would make an impact. It would probably get lost. And I remember one morning Hannah pops out of her room and she's like, I've got it. She's like, I think we need to aggregate these rights and create one centralized hub, and also facilitate premium broadcasts for these leagues. And what our business model is that we retain the broadcast sponsorship elements. We're able to sell all of that, and so we're taking a massive risk. But she's like, and then we just started to develop the idea and what we wanted to build on the back of that, and our hub and what we wanted that to be and who we wanted to market that to. But I also remember that moment. I remember another moment that really kind of propelled us also. It's one thing to come up with a cool idea and for us to start to develop it. But, secondly, we spoke to the FA Pitch, who represented the FA WSL International Media Rights. And we said, look, this is our idea. it might be kind of crazy, but if we do this, we invest in the rights. We don't have a company just yet, but we're going to launch this. We're very confident within ourselves. And we said, if we can facilitate premium broadcasts for the FAWSL, would you trust us, to take the rights? And they were like, yeah, if you can get us on NBC, because that's who we kind of like targeted as our broadcast partner, because they have the Premier League and so on and so forth. But we had a phenomenal breakfast meeting in January. So again, very quick turnaround with NBC, with Wendy Bass and John Miller. And we came in, we didn't know what they were going to say. We said, look, this is our idea. We presented it from the other side. We said, if we get the FAWSL rights, we have this idea. Will you support us and put this on NBC? Like we feel like this really needs to happen for the women's game. We want to build kind of, our hub and our OTT platform and community platform. On the back of that, but this needs to happen for the game and to grow an audience and fans. And lo and behold, they were so supportive. So we had those two conversations, and I remember the breakfast meeting specifically because Hannah and I looked at each other after that and we said, I think we may have something here, and then it was just like a process of finding investors, and then obviously getting everything over the line. And then we started to speak to the French league and the German league, and we started to reach out, and, people were really supportive of what we wanted to do. So, but I remember those two moments when Hannah popped out of the room, and then our breakfast meeting with NBC, I think we felt like we had some traction and something to go off of. But again, we've turned this around really quickly, with all our broadcast partners and all those agreements and coordination. It's a lot. And the leagues and, launching our platform, all almost like we launched our venture that we announced that FAWSL and NBC and DAZN all in like the same time, probably the same week. It's funny. We had like, the week before, we're like, oh my gosh, we don't even have a logo. We don't have a website or landing page. And we were doing all these deals without a landing page, a website. We hadn't really, we were in negotiations with our investors. But I think what made us get this over the line was that we just had full confidence. I think we just kept being like, yeah, we're going to get this done. So if we do this, this is going to happen. And we just kept pushing forward and pushing forward. We never like hesitated, or it's interesting because in life you always have some insecurities or hesitations, or, I've had them, everybody has them as human beings. Right. But with this, for whatever reason, whether, you can believe that this was kind of the universe saying this is definitely meant to happen, but it just felt like we were super confident. We went in, we acted as if it was going to happen every step of the way. I think because, deep down inside, we really believed in what we were building and what we could build and the change that we could really drive. And you have the biggest clubs in the world now investing on the women's side. So there's a massive commercial opportunity there too. And obviously you have the U.S. women's national team players having gone over too, which was not planned on our part whatsoever. But, there's incredible commercial opportunity and value, I think, in the women's game if, you can start to build fans around them.
Esmeralda, one of the necessities of the women's game, I mean, when you were sharing this aha moments with your partner, you kind of like, you find the importance of broadcasting and media exposure. And this has been discussed of plenty, I mean, in kind of like in the big congresses around the women's football. But do you think maybe from your perspective and the perspectives of the company, is there like this objective, maybe not your main objective, but maybe it is, it's just we're trying to find out. Do you think you want to tackle this kind of disparities that are already going on in different countries? Let's say, for example, in Colombia, we're not really sure about the rights of the league here. And I'm sure that in Portugal, they have a completely different perspective, and there are even countries where they are not recording them. Maybe they don't rely on the federation. Maybe they throw this ball and they ask the clubs to do it. So you're kind of like, you're working on that to try and finish this disparity and kind of like give them a formal framework in this side.
Yeah, like we're trying. I think this is, I think a lot of investment, it needs to happen in the women's game and in any sport, right? At the club level, the player level. But I do, like, the more and more I think about like what we're doing and the problem we're solving, I think to me, it's like the fundamental thing that needs to happen, because, without this premium visibility and making it easy and accessible for people to watch, with such a fragmented media landscape, it's very hard to attract people if it's lost behind a paywall, or it's, on some sort of niche platform, or it's difficult to find. It's, people don't want to deal with that, right? I think it makes sense, right? So, but you can't grow fans unless it's like consistently accessible and visible and easy to find and easy to access. And without fans, again, it's just not, like, the leagues are just always, it's going to decelerate growth, and I think, we hope that we inspire people to realize, whether that's leagues or clubs or federations, maybe we should start investing in this, or, potentially look for, to strategically, like, make this accessible and visible to fans. Because I think about it a lot. I'm like, this is, what if we didn't have regular access to Messi or Ronaldo on a weekly basis? Like, they wouldn't be the players that they are. They wouldn't have the commercial value or the marketability that they have, right? And all of that drives the game. Like, they're role models and heroes on the field. And then people obviously in turn watch them. And then it's the same across the board, whether it's at the, with people's affinity to clubs specifically or to players. I always bring this example up because I've thought about this a million times already, but, sometimes there's, investment on, player brand, branded content or player features, and, which are great and definitely need to happen. But I wouldn't be interested in, Messi, if I was scrolling through social media and I had no idea who he was on the field. I never got to see him play. Like, I wouldn't care, what he ate for breakfast, or what, how he grew up. I think no one would, right? But what makes all of that stuff interesting is people seeing him and how he performs on the field, and he's a hero on the field. And so I think that's like, I just have thought about that, and I'm like, wow, it just feels quite simple. Like, these leagues and teams and players need visibility to grow fandom, and that's hopefully going to drive a lot of reinvestment and value into the sport, the league, the clubs, the players. And obviously that trickles down to the players getting more money, in terms of salary and better conditions. But obviously, investment in broadcast and production is, it's a risk on the leagues and the club's part. So it's hard, and I get it, especially during a difficult time like COVID.
Exactly. And usually when we look to the women's football business, at a first sight, we can say, oh, we can do everything we want because this can grow and develop a lot from whatever side we want. There's a lot to be done, and it's easy because no one has done it before. Of course, I'm saying this ironically, but it's also true at the same time. So, in fact, we can have a huge margin to the things, but usually there's so few resources to create or develop something. And for example, from the outside, when we look at your company, we can say, oh, great idea. Now I know where I can watch it. There's someone taking care of it. But if you look deeply, you realize that there's only few matches being broadcasted all over the world, which difficults a company like yours to grow in a certain way. And taking that in consideration and having in mind the process to build a platform like yours, like reaching stakeholders and other companies, can you tell us what are the biggest challenges and difficulties to create and deliver a platform like Atalanta Media?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that right now, because we are just starting on this journey. So I think you'll have to ask me that in like 6 to 12 months.
Okay, we promise.
I promise you guys. Well, I would love to chat with you again. I don't know. I think what I will say is we want to kind of change the culture, and really this is going to be marketed young girls and fans and boys. It doesn't really matter, but I think young girls, you know, you have 1.5 to 2 million young girls in the U.S. that play the game at the grassroots level through to the collegiate level. And then you have, you know, these are stats taken, you know, obviously, but you've got 30 million across the globe that play that have never had access to the women's game. But, you know, culturally, especially in the US, you have to get them to want to watch it. It hasn't really been within their culture either. So I think there's going to be some challenges along the way, and we want to shift that culture so that young girls growing up playing the game are like, oh yes, I want to become a fan of this club. I'm going to watch, you know, on a weekly basis. I'm going to become a fan. This is my idol. You know, I think we have that'll probably be, you know, the hardest thing to do, I'd imagine. But I don't know. I think you're gonna have to ask me that in like 6 to 12 months, and then I'm sure I'll have a list for you.
It's good that you're being recorded, because we can then send you this and, okay, Esmeralda, remember that we so you are commanded now. This is recorded. So, but actually going into this kind of challenges that you're mentioning, that maybe you will need to build a bit of this in the future. But so we are aware of this. The women's game is still starting, is still in its infancy. There is a long way to go. But regarding media rights, we are still, and mentioned this before, few federations and leagues there's already, maybe some of them, they are kind of like dealing with this with their legal partners and trying to see if they can sell. I mean, since they have a lack of resources, they are seeing this as a potential way of gaining this revenues. But there is because of this lack of legal framework, there is always conflict of interest regarding media and sponsorship rights. And we have the example of the last round of the Continental Cup in England. There was a huge deal, and this was the reason why there wasn't the possibility of broadcasting this round. As we are aware, the business needs to go on, and we cannot stop this line of delivering and buying and selling rights. Do you think there is a space of growing? I mean, even though we have this conflict, or maybe you need to tackle this right now, there should be a discussion like a lot deeper on this in the countries and maybe on a global level.
Yeah, I mean, you still have in certain countries in leagues the rights being sold independently by each club. And you know what we've tried to tackle all of that. You know, we're doing a lot of work to try to work even through those challenges with various leagues. We are speaking to other leagues as well. It makes it really hard, and I think it poses a challenge as well for broadcasters, because you know it takes a lot of time and resources to then start to buy individually by club, or you know, in some cases, I think the Spanish league, some of the rights are sold collectively and are represented by an agency, and then another half is sold, I think, by the federation or individually by each club. And I think that's probably consistent with a lot of the leagues around the women's leagues around the world. But the kind of the collective kind of process, you know, just like you see mostly on the men's side, although, you know, some of them have started that way. You know, I think that makes it a lot easier, you know, for any sort of broadcaster, any sort of facilitator like ourselves to facilitate, you know, premium distribution and accessibility. So yes, these are challenges that definitely exist. You know, we've experienced them, you know, speaking to various leagues. And it just makes it a lot more difficult to kind of facilitate something for them in terms of visibility and accessibility. So I think that this is probably something that internally they have to work out. You know, obviously what we've seen is working with these leagues, obviously with D1 Arkema and FAWSL, as they sell it collectively. So it's been a bit easier for us to manage that process. So yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's like, you know, I think the women's game also is in its infancy. It's an immature, you know, it business in a lot of ways. And just like kind of men's football and any sort of other sport, new sport, I think you're always going to go through these stages and these challenges of getting it, I guess, quote unquote, right. But yeah, so there's an understanding there that it might need some time, but I think the quicker that leagues can establish this process, I think it's going to be a lot easier for them to start to sell their international broadcast rights and start to build fans and hopefully drive a lot more value into the club.
Yeah, absolutely. What we need now is unity, and then everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I think, it's funny because some people I don't know. I think it's just sometimes society, whether it's ego driven or I don't know what it is, but I think people like to hold things very tight. We're not doing that because I don't think that's in our best interest for what we want to build on our owned and operated platform. And it's just not in the best interest of the game for anybody, So, I think sometimes putting aside what's been traditionally done or what's been done on the men's side, because, men's football is a lot more mature and in a different stage and very different. And then kind of putting that aside and looking at women's football in a very different way and unifying it and kind of, looking at what strategically can leagues and clubs do in order to come together to drive and accelerate growth and change in the game. So I so believe in unity and partnership and coming together. I think it's hard for some people to wrap their heads around that because they may have traditional experiences in more mature leagues and sports. But, I would encourage people to look at, women's football a little bit differently and see, what would be in the best interest of the leagues, the players, the clubs for success and accelerated growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a different product. It's exactly what you said. And now we have a chance to do things differently and to grow our game. It's the same game. It's football, but it's a different product. We need to look. Also, I already said in this podcast, we are lucky ones because we can look to our side, to the men's side, and look what went wrong. So we have the chance to do something better, and we have to also look to ourselves and see that some countries are not at the same level as others, and will not have the rights as the same price. So we'll not try to grow something really fast, and after 2 years we'll see that we don't have the base. So we need to build a solid base, and after we can think about it. And we hope for unity here. And for me, it's my personal opinion. Of course, there's a lot of things. We are entering the business, but there's a lot of countries that aren't in the business now, unfortunately. So we need to look back. And also, when I see some countries with clubs that broadcast their own matches, doesn't matter where, it's a way to start. And if we turn this visible, after we can sell these rights to other companies, and in the companies like yours that can distribute the rights, but at least make it visible. Make it visible in a way. Yeah. And after you can sell the product. It's like another product. It doesn't matter what it is, football or not football. We need to look at like this and turn it visible to make girls come back, to make girls want to play, to feel like they are at home, to have fun. And after, if we are lucky to have a girl that wants to be a player, a professional player, and in that stage we can talk about business. I hope so that it turns in that way. But I'm usually in this I'm very happy and look for the future. And many people said to me, you are dreaming. So I hope that this dream comes true one day. So
yeah, I think it will, Katya. I believe it. I do.
Okay.
And I think this is the first step. Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're three dreamers. But actually, Esmeralda, we have been so lucky to have you here sharing your ideas, your story, and your courage, because that's what actually we're trying to accomplish here, to try and make them believe and make them dream as well, to try and our audiences to try and find their paths and work hard for them. I mean, to tell people that, like Katya is like, okay, you're a dreamer, Okay, I will keep dreaming, but I will accomplish my dream. That's the thing that we're trying to accomplish. So thank you so much for agreeing to meet with us. And to everyone out there, thank you so much for your support, for hearing us. And remember to follow us for more content on Twitter and Instagram with the account @2goalspodcast. Remember, we're also on YouTube. Please send us some love there as well. And thank you and have a lovely week.